My name is Bob Bryant. I'm an 82-year-old retired dentist and have a recollection of the climate in the 1930s and how the climate changed in the 1940s and in the 1950s. In February, March, April, and November of 2015, I attended 4 presentations by Rutgers professors on climate change. They showed charts to prove their points. I will prove them to be misleading their students and the rest of us with false charts and a changing position once their theory proves to be wrong. You will be subject to this propaganda. It is a socialist scheme to gain a bigger, more controlling government. To you professors who know of the fraud, it is time to step forward and explain to your students the truth, or our country will be irreparably harmed and our freedoms lost. Climate change is the #1 issue facing our country and the world today. Because if the climate change people get their way, the United States would be weak, you would be poor. Could the lights go out? Our leaders say climate change is the #1 threat to America and the world. But if we do away with fossil fuels with no suitable replacement, our country will be transformed. They target carbon dioxide as a villain and call it a pollutant. I will focus on 2 presentations by Rutgers professors, Dr. Tony Broccoli and Dr. Jennifer Francis. The slide is from Rutgers. Note they're talking about New Jersey and climate change. And this is steam, it's not smoke, and it is not carbon dioxide. This slide proves they believe their audience has never been taught that carbon dioxide is colorless. You can't see it. The chart shows how dependent we are on oil, natural gas, and coal. Can you imagine how we would survive without the sources of energy which are encircled? We would have to rely on those with the check marks. The environmentalists have battled against nuclear production for many decades. Note the arrow to see how the use of wood, depicted in green, was the main source of energy in the early 19th century. As the use of coal, depicted in dark blue, rose, the use of wood as a source of energy decreased. Therefore, the use of coal saved our woodlands. When men started to burn fossil fuels, man-made carbon dioxide increased, as well as life expectancy, population, and the gross domestic product per capita, which is the measure of prosperity. The amount of carbon dioxide produced by man is tiny compared to the carbon dioxide produced by nature. I will introduce you to the giants of science, superstars, so to speak, to bolster my position on global warming. Richard Feynman is one such superstar. He attended MIT and received his PhD from Princeton. Upon graduation, he was asked to join the Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb, and he became a project manager. He is called the father of nanotechnology. He wrote the most popular physics book ever written. He won the Nobel Prize in Physics. Dr. Feynman explains the scientific method.
Now I'm going to discuss how we would look for a new law. In general, we look for a new law by the following process. First, we guess it. Then we well, don't laugh, that's really true. Then we compute the consequences of the guess to see what, if this is right, if this law that we guessed is right, we see what it would imply, and then we compare those computation results to nature, or we say compare to experiment or experience. Compare it directly with observation to see if it works. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. In that simple statement is the key to science. It doesn't make a difference how beautiful your guess is. It doesn't make a difference how smart you are who made the guess or what his name is. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. That's all there is to it.
This is Dr. Feynman's slide, shown by Dr. Easterbrook. And he said, science is a method of finding things out. Observation, testing, and experimentation is the ultimate judge of the truth of a concept. If any exception to a concept can be proven by observation, the concept is wrong. That comes from Dr. Albert Einstein. And the number of scientists who believe something is irrelevant to the validity of a concept. That comes from Galileo, the famous 16th century scientist. Galileo essentially said consensus means nothing. The consensus in his time thought the earth was the center of the universe. Galileo thought the earth revolved around the sun and was therefore persecuted by Pope Urban. We should first examine the two major premises upon which climate change rests. The first is that man-made carbon dioxide is a major cause of global warming, and the second is that Michael Mann's hockey stick graph is true and the world is warmer now than it has been in the last 1,000 years. I shall show that both premises are false and that their predictions have not materialized. The climate change promoters like to show the great increase in carbon dioxide since the 1950s to explain their two premises. The warmest claim this rapid rise in carbon dioxide is due to the rise of the Industrial Revolution in the 1950s, in which we used great amounts of fossil fuels. But the Industrial Revolution began in the late 1700s and was in full bloom by the year 1900. We know that. Dr. Broccoli's presentation is on why is New Jersey's climate changing. He said his research interest is climate modeling. I didn't understand how one can determine the past climate in New Jersey using models created on computers. Dr. Broccoli's chart is easily refuted by examining the data collected with thermometers over the last 120 years. I sat next to Dr. Broccoli at a climate presentation at the Rutgers Livingston campus student study in November 20th, 2015. I asked him how he could devise computer programs to determine the climate for New Jersey for the last 120 years. He revealed that he used carbon dioxide records, the brightness of the sun, sulfate, aerosols, and the burning of coal. So Dr. Broccoli bases his chart partly, perhaps mainly, on the assumption that carbon dioxide is a cause of global warming, and then he factors in the other items. Let's compare Dr. Broccoli's chart on the left with the actual temperatures recorded by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric. Dr. Broccoli's chart shows the cold readings in blue and the warm readings in red. He shows the beginning of the 19th century to be cold, when in fact it was quite warm. He shows the 30s to be cool, while in fact it was extremely hot. He shows the 40s to be very warm, when in fact it was cold. He shows the beginning of the 21st century to be extremely hot, when it was actually quite cool. The NOAA chart, and I call this outfit NOAA, correlates exactly with my recollection of the 3 decades of the 30s, 40s, 50s. It was so hot in the 30s that I would frequently come inside for a shower to cool off. In the 40s, it was so cold that I could play ice hockey outside all winter. And in 1950, it was warm, and the ice never formed. I remember it vividly because I was extremely disappointed. I was a junior in high school at the time. My ice hockey days ended. The chart on the right destroys both of the climate change alarmist premises, namely that man-made carbon dioxide is a major cause of global warming, and that Michael Mann's hockey stick graph is true, and that the world is warmer than it has been in 1,000 years. We only have to go back to the 1930s to prove that assertion to be wrong. The dotted line represents carbon dioxide. And you can see how low the carbon dioxide is at the beginning of the century. So it couldn't have had much of an effect to cause this tremendous heat in the 30s. After the 30s, it rose rapidly, and there was no corresponding rise in temperature at the beginning of the 21st century. The warmists have it backwards. 71% of the Earth's surface consists of the oceans. The oceans are a vast reservoir of carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide forms when the animal plant life in the oceans die and decay at the bottom of the oceans. You can see the deep ocean is a vast reservoir of carbon dioxide. When this cold water was heated by the tremendous heat in the 30s, it penetrated through, and carbon dioxide was released back into the atmosphere. I will demonstrate how carbon dioxide is driven out of cold water with heat. This demonstration will show that carbon dioxide is colorless, and also that heat will drive carbon dioxide out of a body of cold water. All these sodas have carbon dioxide under pressure to give the drink its fizz or good taste. This is a bottle of seltzer water, which is carbon dioxide injected into water under pressure. I just removed this cold bottle of seltzer water with the label removed so the contents can easily be seen. There are few bubbles coming to the surface. When I apply heat to the bottle, you will see the carbon dioxide being driven from the water. This is a fact. This demonstration can be duplicated anywhere in the world under the same conditions. The heat of the 1930s released carbon dioxide out of the oceans. All this carbon dioxide was created naturally and was not man-made. This Environmental Protection Agency chart shows the U.S. heat index wave. Note the spike in 1930 and the higher spike in 1936. And how cold it was in the 60s. The highest temperature recorded in New Jersey was 110 degrees on July 10th, 1936. In the book, Two Spectacular Seasons, Al Lopez, the Dodger catcher, recalled that in the 1930s, sometimes the temperature wouldn't go under 100 degrees, day or night. Sometimes we ended up sleeping in bathtubs with ice in the water just to get some sleep, but it was still real hot. Here's a trivia question for you. When was the only time a Major League Baseball game was canceled due to heat? Answer: on July 16, 1936, the Cincinnati-Brooklyn game was canceled due to extreme heat. This is a cartoon from July 28, 1930, which says the summer of 1930 set records in the Washington for days that the temperature reached or exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit at 11 days. In the 1930s, the Southern Plains were called the Dust Bowl. Such high temperatures were never before recorded. The heat was intense. 1936 heat wave in England. A terrible wave hits Berlin, Germany in 1930. Citizens flee 105-degree heat. Unprecedented weather attacks capital city. In the 40s, it was so cold we played hockey all winter outside. I played on this hockey rink. when I was a junior in high school, no ice formed. In 2012, Dr. Broccoli said the annual snowfall across much of the northern hemisphere is projected to decrease during the 21st century. Wrong. The northern hemisphere has had incredible amounts of snowfall these last few years. This is a failed prediction. Amazingly, this slide and the two following slides are shown by Dr. Francis. Broccoli and other warmists had previously predicted less snow. Dr. Francis could ignore the increase in Arctic ice in 2013. How many people look at satellite photos of the Arctic sea ice? But millions upon millions of people were experiencing the cold, ice, and snow across the northern hemisphere. So she developed a new theory to explain her self-described wacky weather. Giraffes in Russia, really deep snow in Japan. Dr. Francis's area of study is a rapid Arctic sea ice melt. This is Dr. Francis's Arctic sea ice slide. Let me orientate you. You can see the first photo was in 1980, after a period of great cold, when you would expect maximum ice cover. And the second photo was taken in 2012, showing the maximum ice melt that was available. She said 1/2 of the Arctic sea ice melted in this short period. If so, where is the sea rise at the Jersey Shore? Where is the flooding of Miami and South Florida, of which Al Gore hysterically warned us of 25 years ago? The Arctic Sea is such a small area of the Earth, and so much of the ice is already melted, one has to wonder if there would be any discernible rise in ocean levels if the Arctic Sea ice melted completely. She doesn't show the 2013 50% increase in Arctic sea ice. It would be difficult to conceive of a logical reason for the discrepancy, which would conform to the warmest narrative. Dr. Broccoli showed a similar slide. The reasons Professor Broccoli and Francis showed 2012 data in 2015 is that the 2013 Arctic ice photo showed a dramatic 50% in Arctic ice in 1 year. These satellite photos were taken with a new technology called cryosat. Using sonar technology where the depth as well as the extent of the ice can be determined, giving us the total volume of the ice. In the 2012 photo, there is a lot of open water. Below are gradients, which show the thin ice in blue, thicker ice in green, and the thickest ice in yellow and red. You can see there is very little green ice and only a smidgen of yellow ice and no red ice at all. In the 2013 photo, you see a great expansion and there's very little open water. The green area has increased significantly, showing deeper ice. The yellow ice has expanded and there's even areas of red ice. How could we have more ice when there is more human-produced carbon dioxide than ever before? If you and I are the guilty party with our SUV cars and our fossil fuels, how could the Earth be colder? The 2013 cryosat photo destroys the validity of Dr. Francis's study on the rapidly melting Arctic sea ice. Dr. Francis has received almost $1.5 million in grants since 1998. I've not been able to find out if she receives speaking fees and travel expenses to all the wonderful places she visits when giving speeches. This is Dr. Francis's chart showing the rapid Arctic sea ice melts, which she claims is greater now than in the last 1,000 years. She doesn't show the 50% increase in ice in the 2013. She showed this chart in 2015, 1 year and 4 months after the 2013 cryosat results were revealed. When I asked her about the 50% increase in Arctic sea ice, she murmured that it was slight. That statement proves she knew about the increase in sea ice and chose to deceive us by not showing the significant increase. This is a deception by omission. Instead, she had the audacity to project the downward trajectory off the chart. Arctic sea ice rebounds in 2013. Now we see why Dr. Francis picked 2012 to the end of her slide. This was the year in which the Arctic sea ice melt was at its maximum. She can't show the 50% rebound in 2013 because man-made carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is greater than ever before. If carbon dioxide is a cause of global warming, there should be less sea ice now than ever before. At the November 10th, 2015 meeting in Rutgers, she again ignored this rebound, which continues to the present day. Antarctica sea ice is increasing. Al Gore said the Arctic sea ice could be ice-free by now, yet satellite images show 1.7 square kilometers more ice than 2 years ago, an area twice the size of Alaska. This is another failed prediction. On the right is Dr. Mann's notorious hockey stick graph, right here, which was adopted by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 2001, in which he said the Earth is hotter than in 1,000 years. The medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age are not shown. On the left, we see the IPCC 1990 report, which included a medieval warm period and a Little Ice Age. I have inserted a line at the top of the medieval warm period to show how much warmer it was then than now. Archaeological evidence of the Vikings' colonization of Greenland and a settlement in Labrador supports a medieval warm period. Dr. Singer of the University of Virginia developed these charts to show the insignificance of carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. In the first chart above, water vapor overwhelms all other greenhouse gases. This is water vapor. On the next chart, he shows these 4 minor greenhouse gases, and he throws water vapor out. So this is the 4 minor ones. The largest of the remaining group is carbon dioxide, of which 97% is naturally produced, not man-made. Dr. Singer relates that he was a friend of the now deceased Dr. Roger Revelle, who was investigating whether man-made carbon dioxide could cause global warming. He gave a D grade to a young political science major, Al Gore. Al Gore took his sparse knowledge and ran with it to write hysterical books warning us of global warming and made science a political issue to further socialism. Dr. Revelle then sent letters to Congress urging them to wait 10 or 15 years so further studies could be done. Dr. Revelle saw no urgency. Here we see the large errors that can be incorporated. Computer-generated models. 42 wrong computer models are in blue, while the actual temperature is in black. There has been no global warming since 1998, which is inexplicable with the climate change theory, since there is now more man-made carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than ever before, with China, India, Russia, and other developing countries producing ever more carbon dioxide. President Obama, John Kerry, and Hillary Clinton have all claimed that climate change is the greatest threat to America and the world. We are faced with an incredible dilemma in which our nation's leaders are willing to exhaust our resources and impoverish our citizens to fight the bogus theory of climate change. The government is spending tens of billions to combat global warming. They would spend trillions. We are increasing our national debt and taxes to pay for this. With restrictions placed on fossil fuels, our food bills, our fuel bills, and our electricity bills will increase. Obama says under his cap and trade plan, electricity rates would skyrocket.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal power plants, natural gas, you name it, whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers.
John Holdren is a scientific advisor for President Obama. You will recall he was a climate cooling alarmist in the 1970s and then switched to the global warming hysteria, which is still with us. Incomprehensibly, we are to believe man and fossil fuels are the culprits in both instances. During Holdren's global cooling days, he co-authored Ecoscience, a book with Paul and Ann Ehrlich, in which forced abortions and mass sterilizations were mentioned as a possibility to combat the population explosion. Even more alarming, Holdren said a planetary regime should assume control of the global economy and also dictate intimate details of America's lives using an armed international police force. Stephane Hallegatte wants the United States to pay a carbon tax. This is Stephane Hallegatte, who I witnessed making a presentation at Rutgers in April of 2015. He is a European representative of the World Bank. He roused our sympathy by showing slides of pitiful slum children who he claimed were at a great risk due to climate change. He then made a pitch for a carbon tax, which he claimed would be small and that people wouldn't notice it. I went home and found a video of Hallegatte's presentation in Belgium, in which he called for $1.5 trillion per year to fight climate change. The United States is targeted to pay for most of this. Do you trust bankers to control this money after they ripped off the American people of hundreds of millions of dollars that led to the collapse of our economy in 2008?
And the World Bank estimates that the gap between what we invest today and what we should invest to do that is between $1 and $1.5 trillion per year.
There are many cases of climate change advocates altering data. I shall give you two. The EPA altered their U.S. temperature chart by lowering the high of the 1930s down here to this point, and by increasing temperatures in 2012 up here, so it is higher, making this the new high. Either through hackers or leaks, emails from Dr. Michael Mann of Penn State University were uncovered, in which Dr. Mann of Penn State University was concerned that there was a global warming hiatus or stoppage. Dr. Jones of East Anglia University in England replied that they were altering their data to support their point of view, and Dr. Mann could do the same. You deserve to know who the sources are for this presentation. They are called flat earthers by Al Gore and Obama, dangerous right-wing radicals by Vice President Biden, and derided widely by the climate change advocates and the liberal media. You be the judge. 31 scientists in the United States alone have refuted the climate change theory. 9,000 of them PhD. To be brief, I shall only point out 5. Freeman Dyson is in the Academy of Achievement. He is labeled a cosmic genius. Michael Crichton, who you know is the author of Andromeda's Strain and the Jurassic Park, was a Democrat and friend of Al Gore. Michael Crichton graduated from Harvard summa cum laude with a degree in anthropology, and then went on to get his medical degree at Harvard. He was a visiting professor in anthropology at Cambridge. He was an expert on computers and said that computer models are unreliable. He was called the most accomplished man I ever met by one master of ceremonies. Michael Crichton believed in global warming until he examined the data. Then he changed his mind and wrote a novel called State of Fear, in which he explained the creation of fear, and a section at the end of each chapter explaining the truth about global warming. Dr. Judith Curry is the chair of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at the prestigious Georgia Tech University. Look at a few of her awards right here. She, like Dr. Michael Crichton, accepted the global warming theory at face value. Then she studied the data and became a fierce critic of the global warming scam. Dr. Richard Lindzen is a professor of meteorology in MIT's Department of Earth, Atmospheric and Planetary Sciences. In regard to climate change scientists, Lindzen said their data and their methods did not support their claims. Dr. Moore was the only PhD in Greenpeace, and when they became political and said that chlorine was the devil's element, Dr. Moore explained to them that chlorine was used to purify drinking water and save millions of lives. He was rebuked. He left Greenpeace. Listen to Dr. Moore's video in Australia.
I'll come back to the pause in a moment, but you do concede that human-induced carbon emissions did contribute or have contributed to global warming in the second half of the 20th century?
No, I do not. This present warming trend began 250 years ago with the end of the Little Ice Age. The Thames River last froze over in England in 1814. We certainly had nothing to do with that. It had been freezing over on a regular basis for 300 years during the Little Ice Age, and now the climate has warmed, and they say that we're responsible for the last 50 years or so. I don't buy it, and I do not see that carbon dioxide is actually the main cause of warming in this world.
Do you believe that carbon dioxide, human-induced carbon dioxide, does have some impact on the climate?
Yes, theoretically or hypothetically, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas which, all else being equal, could cause warming. But all else is not equal. The Earth is not a laboratory where everything else is controlled. We have the whole atmosphere and all the oceans and all the clouds and all the trees and plants and plankton growing on the Earth, all interacting together. It may well be that increases in carbon dioxide actually have the opposite effect to warming the Earth due to creating more water vapor in the atmosphere and more clouds. You cannot predict the future of the climate with a computer model. It is not a crystal ball, and there's no way that it's possible to see through chaos in climate with a computer model like they say they can.
Well, science is about testing theories against observable fact, I suppose, but you are a scientist, you have a PhD in ecology, but do you accept that you're in the minority, that most of the scientific community thinks that carbon emissions, that CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere are having a deleterious effect?
The main word there was think. In other words, that's their opinion. But the 97% is a complete fabrication. And even if it was true, I would be proud to be in the 3% of people who recognize that carbon dioxide is in fact a positive factor in our climate. If there was no carbon dioxide in the global atmosphere, this would be a dead planet because it is the main food for all life on Earth. So I don't see how, given that we've had 18 years of no significant warming, during which time we've put 1/4 of all the CO2 into the atmosphere that humans have emitted since the beginning of the industrial age, there's no warming. So surely that brings into serious question the idea of a lockstep cause-effect relationship between CO2 emissions and climate change.
Well, whether or not people agree with you on the science or on what you think the long-term impacts are, the facts on the pause are indisputable, aren't they? The UK Met Office, Hadley Centre, a world-renowned centre on climate policy, says there has been a pause over the last 15 to 18 years in global warming. NASA calls it a hiatus, says there's some warming but not really at the same levels that we saw in the second half of last century. Why don't we hear more about this pause in global warming at the moment?
Because so many people are tied in, have a very strong interest in this waterfall of money, about $1 billion a day, that is going into all the various elites around believing in human-caused global warming. The scientists, the media, the Greenpeace and the environmental movement, the politicians, the businesses who are making a killing from all these subsidies on wind and solar energy. So it's very difficult to break through. But I tell you for sure, we do not have proof that we are the cause of warming. It isn't warming much anyways, so even if CO2 is a greenhouse gas, it's not having anywhere near the effect that people thought it would. But it is an incontrovertible fact that carbon dioxide is the most important food for life on Earth. And if it was 2, 3, and 4 times higher than it is today, we'd have higher crop production, higher forest production. It's a fact. There's no doubt about it. Google greening of the Earth and see what CSIRO has shown, 20 to 30% increase in photosynthesis and plant growth around the world due to carbon dioxide fertilization. It is a food. It is a nutrient. It is a fertilizer. It is not a pollutant. And I challenge anybody to tell me different.
Photosynthesis is a process in which plants take in water from the roots. The leaves take in carbon dioxide and the light from the sun, using chlorophyll to create glucose and oxygen. So without carbon dioxide, plants would die, then animals would starve. We also need the oxygen to breathe. Carbon dioxide and temperatures were much higher during the Jurassic period and the Cretaceous period, when dinosaurs and plants flourished. You can see how the carbon dioxide decreased. The Earth's temperatures have been going down for 50 million years. It was 16 degrees warmer then, and the ancestors of all living animals survived those temperatures. Reclaimed lands are the results of oil sands mining in Canada, not the horrible pictures the warmists show. A better theory for climate change is that vast eruptions of radioactive material in the sun cast heat toward the Earth and cause climate change. These are called sunspots and have been observed by astronomers for about 400 years. Here we see a depiction of the Great Frost of 1683. One of several times the Thames River in London froze over in the 1600s during the depth of the Little Ice Age, when the sunspots went to sleep, so to speak.
This is the most consequential, urgent, sweeping collection of challenges we face. Sea levels are rising, ice caps are melting, storms, droughts, and wildfires are wreaking havoc.
Since the North American glaciers melted during this period here, this is the sea level, it rose. But for the last 7,000 years, there has been only slight increase in the sea levels. So Clinton's wrong. Ancient droughts were worse in California before man-made fossil fuels. Look at here. So man-made fossil fuels didn't cause this. Tornadoes aren't increasing. Tropical storms aren't increasing. Apparently, there's not less snow cover. No recent flood compares to the Mississippi flood of 1927. No global warming for 18.5 years. I suggest you do nothing until you feel secure enough to speak out. Go about getting educated, and in your spare time go to lectures by skeptics or watch them online. You can go to YouTube and enter the following bulleted items into the YouTube search bar. Professors and teachers with tenure must step out of the shadows and fight back, like the courageous Professor Judith Curry. Action is absolutely necessary. The students in the liberal colleges must learn the truth if they are going to live in a free society. Thank you for watching this presentation.